Welcome back to the Renovate podcast.
Yes, welcome back, everybody. If you're watching this episode, thank you so much for watching again, especially if you watched the first one.
It's a learning process, but when we last came to you, we had just talked about Valentine's Day and Lent was starting, and we're now finishing up Lent at time of recording and heading into the Easter season.
It's Good Friday today, and it is a Good Friday. It's beautiful out here, and talking about the ultimate sacrifice of Jesus, what he did for us on that day. To me, that's just, it totally blows my mind. His sacrifice. I just can't even imagine dying for somebody else.
Yeah, I'm for sure not that brave.
I know that's the type of love you're supposed to have for other people, but I'm just not there yet.
Nope, and that's okay. But one of the great things about Lent is we're asked to call on sacrifices for ourselves. And we're asked to either give things up or add things in our life to start to connect with Christ's sacrifice, both during his time on the cross and the 40 days he spent in the desert before his public ministry.
Right.
So what did you do, or what did you plan on doing for Lent?
What I planned on doing, so the things I gave up were Facebook, TV, and movies. Shopping for myself. Now, I could shop for other people and buy necessities like groceries. So I discovered I have a shopping problem because I bought a lot of stuff for other people, but I guess that's not totally bad. And then my plan was to go to Mass at least twice a week, and I think only 1 week I went once instead of twice. So everything else went really well, and actually my experience of only being on Facebook on Sundays, I could not believe how peaceful I felt. Wow, what was I doing to myself logging on multiple times a day to something I thought that I needed, these messages and everything. And yes, it's very helpful sometimes because some people messaged me and then I would see it on Sunday and they were saying things like, "Where are you?"
You're like, sorry, 6 days later.
Yes. But after this whole Lent, people have learned Stephanie's not on Facebook, so I'll find other ways to contact her. But it's just been so peaceful, and you know what? Once Lent is over in 2 days, I'm still only going to log on Sundays because I want this peaceful feeling to never end.
And that's one of the awesome things about Lent is you can find things that help your spiritual life or help your personal life when you feel like you're forced to during those 40 days of Lent.
That's true. Another thing I did, you said 40 days. I think I mentioned it briefly in the last one, that I did 40 days for life, praying in front of Planned Parenthood. And at the beginning, I was really anxious and scared about that. But at the end, I thought, I don't want to stop doing this. It brought me so much peace, which is ironic because so much evil takes place there.
And so much pain.
Yeah, pain and just probably a lot of feelings of hopelessness. But I was filled with hope and joy just praying there. But enough about me. What were you planning on doing for Lent?
So I was the worst planner for Lent this year. Like, it was probably Fat Tuesday, and I was like, oh, Lent's tomorrow. I need to do something. But
that was a day ahead of time. That's plenty of time.
I was doing great, but I had a friend really call me out that fasting without prayer is just a diet. And looking at the past, that's what I'd done for Lent. I'd given up fried food or I'd given up sweets, but I didn't have prayer attached.
That was another thing I did, sweets. Yeah, but that's just...
I mostly did it because I was like, oh, this seems like an easy way to lose 5 pounds. So I really sat there and I was like, what can I do that connects it back to prayer? And then last year I'd given up shopping just because I found in the last couple of years I've become very dependent on shopping, that's become my stress relief, and that's not a healthy stress relief. Retail therapy and be your best friends. So it's just a good way to really take a step back and be like, where is my money going? Like, are these the best uses for me and for my family and my husband and I's goals, or am I just filling my closet with like 40 dresses I'll wear once?
Because were you married last Lent?
No, we were engaged.
So it was a little different.
It was a little different, and he lived 4 hours away, so it was very much an independent thing last year, while this year everything's done together.
So what is the difference in that, if you just want to touch on that for a moment?
It's just really, it's weird to have someone there knowing not just what you've given up for Lent, but knowing when you like mess up and you walk in with a shopping bag and you're like, don't look at this thing. It was on sale and it wasn't going to be on sale on Sunday, so I had to buy it today. But it's also been something really cool because he's encouraged me a lot in it, and like how good it is that I'm breaking these bonds of shopping, that we're starting to control my decisions.
That's very true. It gives me pause for thought because, yeah, like I said, I think I have a shopping problem for sure.
And then the other big thing I tried to do, and I cheated a couple times, but I gave up hot showers. So I slowly went from hot to lukewarm to a little bit colder. I will say I noticed the amount of showers I took a week got real cut down during Lent.
Madeline, wow.
I became
you don't smell bad.
I became all European, the whole every other day thing, dry shampoo. So I probably lost half of the idea of it. But I sure increased my prayer life every time I stepped in that cold shower and was like, dear God, don't let me get hypothermia. Dear God, thank you that I have running water. At least I get to take my cold shower in a heated house and not in the river. Which sounds really silly, but it became such a prayer time for me of being like, wow, like I really am lucky, even if I'm taking this cold shower because I'm choosing to. The fact that I can choose to take a cold shower, it's not something I'm forced to do.
Exactly, because if you just didn't have hot water in your house for whatever reason, that wouldn't really be an extra sacrifice for Lent. Although that would be terrible if that were happening.
Yeah.
I did the no hot showers thing last Lent. And just cold water the whole time. And I didn't even take them on Sundays.
Oh, you are way tougher than me. I took those hot showers on Sunday. I took like 2 a day.
But I found it really an opportunity to grow in grace. And it really was super not something I was feeling like doing. But I would as the cold water would hit, I would think of a person that I was having a really difficult time with. Somebody that I really did not want to pray for to make it just really awful. but I found myself that Jesus blessed me in that, in kind of alleviating some of those harsh feelings that I had toward a person that were just really not Christian feelings to be having. So,
and that's the beauty of Lent. It gives you these 40 days set to allow God to start to transform you. It's 40 days of a very set retreat style. This is what we're doing. This is the journey. We're journeying to the cross, which is then the journey to our salvation.
Right.
And it gives us such a set plan of what to do.
So it sounds like our expectations and what actually happened weren't too far off.
No, I actually mostly did it this year.
High five.
So right now, at the time of recording, we are in the holiest part of the year for the Catholic Church, the Easter Triduum.
Yes.
Which is, Stephanie?
Holy Thursday, Good Friday, which is today, and then Holy Saturday is tomorrow.
And during those 3 days, we remember the Last Supper of Christ, which would be the institution of the Eucharist, his death, and then with Easter Vigil, the end of Easter Saturday, we remember the resurrection. So the entire reason of our faith, the entire source of our salvation, we remember in these 3 days.
The source of our salvation. Yes. Who is?
Jesus Christ.
Yes.
And the beauty of, like, I was in Good Friday service today, and just the beauty that as Catholics, we take these times of sadness. We take these times of mourning. Our faith isn't all going to be happy, and neither is our faith year. We say, it's okay to be sad. It's okay to feel alone and abandoned as Christ did in the garden. Like, these are all feelings you should feel.
Yes.
And that's part of your walk. You don't have to be happy-go-lucky, Jesus saved my soul, so I'm happy everyday person to experience the Catholic faith.
And I think that's one of the large differences sometimes between Christian faiths and the Catholic Christian tradition. Because when you're Christian, I feel like a lot of times they seem like everything's happy all the time, as you were saying. And I think that's sort of a false... Can that be a false
It can
perception?
be a false perception, and it can make it very hard for someone whose life doesn't fit into that happy square. It's like, am I doing this Christian thing wrong? Like,
Yeah.
my life's not put together. Did I miss something in the story? Do I get what's going on?
But as a Catholic, I still feel like that. I think wow, this is really hard. What am I doing wrong? But I think we go through, it fluctuates. Our faith life, it goes through the highs and the lows.
And even you see that in Jesus in the garden where he said, Father, if it be your will, take this away from me. Like even Jesus in both his divinity and his humanity went through those low points where he's like, Father, can I really do this? Like, is this your will? Because if it's not, I'd really be okay with not dying.
Yeah.
But the beauty is he said yes to that, knowing exactly what that yes meant.
And that's huge.
Which sort of leads us into after Easter, 1 week after Easter, we celebrate the second Sunday of Easter and Divine Mercy Sunday.
So what exactly does that mean, and do you know who started that? Was it a pope that started the novena?
The idea of divine mercy has always been around, but it came specifically from a nun named Sister Faustina.
Okay.
Who had a vision of Christ who said to draw this image. And in this image, you see Christ standing with two rays coming out of him. One red and one a white, sometimes blue in some images, or a white-blue color.
Yeah. So the blood is the redeeming quality,
yep,
right?
The red, the blood that redeems our souls. Mm-hmm.
So what is the white/blue?
The white is the cleansing. It's that cleansing of our salvation. As Catholics, we see that cleansing come originally through baptism, where we're removed of original sin. But then every time we go to confession, our soul is cleansed again, and we're given that mercy. And that's the idea, that it's this mercy above what we can understand. A mercy that even if you'd say the same sin every single time, God's arms are still open calling you home.
At the same time, Jesus loves you too much to let you stay where you are. So he'll always be calling us out of our comfort level and what we're striving for. And so whatever we find challenging, that we keep repeating a certain sin, Jesus will give us the grace and also challenge us, and it'll be difficult to change whatever's not right with us.
Exactly. And that's one of the beauties of coming out of Lent. You've come out of this time of a lot of transformation.
Oh,
and then
for
you
sure.
go into 50 days of Easter. And one of my focuses I'm going to try to do these 50 days is try to continue. I've started getting my prayer life back together, but continuing a very set Easter devotion through those 50 days to not let what I've gained during the time in the desert of Lent, but continue it during that time of joy and that time of beauty that we have in the Easter season.
So 50 days after Easter is Pentecost?
Yep, Pentecost, where we remember the coming of the Holy Spirit.
Season. That's a lot. That sounds like a long time.
It is, which I love. Yes, you have to fast 40 days, but then you get 50 days of celebration.
It's a
so
party
it all
for
evens
50
out.
days.
And so much happens during those Easter weeks. You get to read from Acts of the Apostles, which is one of my favorite books, and you just get to see what was happening in the time of the early church, where persecution was the norm, where people didn't fully understand the faith. And it's
that's still today.
Exactly, and that's what's so cool is you can see so many connections with our modern era and the era that apostles were living in the Roman Empire.
Right, and so all that stuff is still very relevant. So Pentecost is the birthday of the church, right? So I was just thinking, if it's the birthday of the church, we should be preparing gifts. So we have a lot of gifts and talents to offer. I think of the parable, it's a parable, right? The gift of the talents, where one guy buries them, one guy invests in them, and one guy uses them to produce more, to make more. And because in those times, talents were used to refer to money. And so I always think about, not always, I don't think about it, once in a great while, what are my gifts and talents, and am I utilizing them? Because I will be held accountable for that. Yikes. So I need to focus on that.
And it's
more.
one of those figuring out where your gifts lie in the church. Not everyone is meant to be a great preacher and be teaching, in front of a great group of people.
Exactly.
Not everyone is meant to be a lector or a Eucharistic minister. We're all called to serve Christ and be missionaries. But the way we do that is going to look different for each person.
And also, we can't do everything. We can't, because I think the tendency is to over-volunteer and over-give. And then we just become exhausted and depleted of everything.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can't be our best selves to others, to be Christ to others.
And I was just thinking about that. I was on a retreat, or leading a retreat last weekend, and they were asking what keeps me from Christ. And I really sat there in prayer and figured out what keeps me from Christ, as bad as it is the stuff I do to serve him, because I get very busy
Too much.
in doing youth groups and retreats and Bible studies, and I go, look, God,
those are all very fantastic
and
things.
they're beautiful and they're serving
Yeah.
Christ, but I look and I'm like, I do all these things, and then I say, I don't have time for prayer, or I need to get out of
so
Sunday
it's-
Mass early because I need to make it to a youth group. And if I'm not feeding myself spiritually, if I'm not going and sitting at the Father's feet, receiving his glory, receiving his help,
Yeah.
I can't be serving correctly, nor am I giving a realistic look at serving.
That's a very good point. So we've talked about Lent, we've talked about Divine Mercy Novena, and do you have some tips on how we can live this coming Easter season in the best way?
Yeah, so something I loved that I got called out on when I was in college was setting aside, set in your day a prayer time. Like time set aside that this is when you do it. In college, that meant I got up at 5:30 every morning.
That's early.
And did a half-hour of prayer. I am not that hardcore anymore, but it's been something I've started to develop. Is before my husband comes to bed, I go and I spend about 15 minutes in prayer. And that doesn't mean 15 minutes of reading my Bible and playing with a rosary and whatever else. It means at least part of that time is just sat in silence, because we have the tendency to busy ourselves in prayer, to stay very
yes, I do that.
busy.
Yes, I know what you mean.
And I've noticed when I stay busy, it's those times I don't want to hear God speak. I want to be like, God, look, I'm reading the Bible and I'm doing my devotion and I'm doing my rosary, so I'm good. But part of prayer is just sitting there in silence, listening. Yeah. So one of the things I'm doing is I'm buying a devotion from a Catholic women's group called Blessed is She that specifically goes from Easter to Pentecost. So
that's probably going to be thick.
yeah,
thick?
it's I'm buying it in the Kindle version, so I don't have to worry about it. But I like it in that we have a ton of devotions for Lent. It's
Okay.
not hard to find devotion books for Lent. There's not a lot to continue that journey into Easter, and there's something beautiful about living in the liturgical season, living in those days of, where am I in this story? Plus, for me, it's a lot easier if I have a book that I do every day, especially one I've been using recently has, take this time to meditate on this, take time to do this. So even in the devotion itself, it forces me to unbusy myself and listen to what Christ is saying.
And that's so countercultural, right? Because we're taught to always be busy, and the only way that you're worth anything is if you're always being productive.
And also that we always have to be the one up front. We live in such a narcissistic society. I'm as bad as anyone that
Me too.
I don't want to stop and listen. I want to be the one talking. So to say, God, this 15 minutes, this 20 minutes is for you. Not me, not my prayers, not asking for stuff. It's for you to speak is crazy, and it's one of the hardest things I ever do, and I'm usually make it like 2 minutes before I give up. But it's an idea and it's a goal.
What I've been doing recently that's kind of like that is for about 10 minutes, I'll just talk to God and I'll tell him all about my life and what's going on and what do you think I should do with this. And so I'm still at that stage where I'm the one talking all the time, but I hope to get to where you are eventually and just be able to sit and listen. I think that'll be my focus during the Easter season.
And it helps if you set up an area. Like my husband and I put up some Catholic art in our room so I can turn and look at the crucifix, or I can look at the Blessed Virgin. Because if I don't have something to focus on, I'm going to spend the whole prayer time like staring at the ceiling.
I have a Sacred Heart
my nail
candle
polish.
that I like to use for that. Yeah, that's good.
Are you planning on doing anything from Easter to Pentecost, or have I...
Well, you gave me some good ideas. This Blessed is She book sounds really good. To be honest, I haven't given it a lot of thought before right now. This Lent has been very spiritually, a time of great spiritual growth for me. And I've gone through some challenging times, but God brings me more grace in those times of trial and suffering, and that's what Lent's about, I think. if we're truly trying to live in the spirit of Lent, those kinds of things might just happen.
Yeah.
Like it or not.
That's awesome.
Because I didn't like it.
No. Well, it's the idea of pruning. I've always heard someone say, when a gardener has to prune a bush, it's going to hurt. Like, you're damaging, you're taking things off. But in order for that bush to grow to its full potential, you have to go in and prune it. That's what God does in our life. In order for us to reach our full potential, he has to prune us, which can be painful. It can be giving up the comforts of our lives. It can be giving up things that are important to us.
Yeah. So if that doesn't happen, that pruning process will become overgrown and just bushy and ugly, right?
Mm-hmm. Or we can just become so self-centered that we don't even notice we've lost sight of Christ because we think we're doing it right, yet we haven't asked him, am I on the right path?
I've heard that the moment that we think that we're on the right track, that's when we're not.
That's usually when it falls apart.
When we think that we have it all together, rather.
Yeah.
That's when, you got to change things up a little bit, get out of your comfort zone. So I'm really glad that we had this time to chat today about how Lent went and how our Easter season will hopefully go. So it feels kind of wrong to be smiling on Good Friday, but I just feel a lot of joy and peace. And I know that only comes from surrendering to God's will, which is super hard, but it's very important in our faith journeys.
Exactly. So next time we'll see what we'll talk about. Maybe what our prayer lives look like. And some resources that can help people develop their prayer life because it's such an important part of our faith. But It's not always something we get a chance to touch on during Mass or Bible studies.
All right. Till next time. Thanks so much for watching, and don't forget to hit like and subscribe to our channel.
Make sure to share us with your friends.
Happy Easter!
And have a great Easter season.